Hey everyone, Brian Von VA here. I hope everyone's doing well and that you guys and gals and everyone in between are feeling A-OK. That being said, let's get right into the video, shall we? What's a satisfying moment of PC character development your players enacted on their own? Part 1. One of the hardest things to instill in some D&D players, especially new ones, is the idea that their characters can change and grow if they want them to. Of course, as a DM, I like to provide hooks and side encounters that encourage or at least offer an opportunity for characters to have moments of self-reflection if the player so chooses, but I found it extremely satisfying when a player does this on their own. In one particular instance was with a player's dragonborn fighter named Krull. He was a passionate and merciless warrior, and he saw things like archers and spellcasters as cowardly tricksters who simply couldn't wield true power. Krull even went so far as to refuse to use magic items and weapons he found or was given. That all changed around level 5 when I threw a zombie beholder at the party. They were well equipped to fight it, and the party was 5 members strong, though it was obviously still a dangerous encounter. Krull charged in before the more tactical members of the party took survey of the situation, and he was blasted with the death ray, failed to save, and took a huge load of damage. Later that same encounter, the appointed party leader dove in front of Krull to tank a disintegration ray, and luckily survived with single-digit HP. They killed the beholder shortly thereafter. Without so much as a word to the other players or to me, Krull suddenly began wielding his magic weapons, and was more respectful to the casters. His first true run-in with powerful magic had taught Krull a hard lesson about the many shapes strength can take, and the character took it to heart, forever changing the way he interacted with the other players and the world. My paladin asked one of the other PCs whether she wanted him to adopt her, which was a huge deal. For context, the other character had been horribly treated by her own family, who work for the big bad evil guy, and has basically been passed from one protector to the next for her entire life. She had people who cared for her, but nowhere that she actually belonged. The paladin was forced to flee his homeland after he chose to halt an orc invasion with a landslide, even though that meant the death of all of their captives, including his wife and daughter, as well as the daughter of his lord. The lord obviously didn't accept the greater good argument and put a bounty on his head. He spent years convincing himself that good and evil weren't important compared to the need to stand as a bastion to protect order and society as a whole. Then he ended up saddled with this incredibly socially awkward 15-year-old girl as a party member, who challenged him to not just do what was necessary, but to be an example of what was right. Then he discovered his daughter had actually survived the avalanche and was being used as bait to lure him home. He saved her, but now he has a daughter who has spent the last 5 years living in the wilderness, convinced that he not only abandoned her, but wanted her dead, and who didn't get along with the party member at all. Then he finds out that the other PC had technically been adopted by an elven noble house, but because of reasons she had to flee from their kingdom, and now they wanted her to come back. The paladin needs to decide whether he thinks he can be a better protector and guardian of her than the elves who sent her back out into the world last time, and decided that he thinks he can, and is willing to stand up to an entire nation for her. So, last session, he told her that he finally had a stable home, a duty to keep him there, his daughter, and a chance to do some good, and that he thought he was ready to provide the kind of life for her she deserved. It was really touching and obvious that the two characters love each other, but they still have a lot of growing to do. That just warmed my itty-bitty little heart. Our barbarian usually goes out of his way to help any children who might be in harm's way, even if it means putting the group at risk. A caster who expected to have the barbarian to hide behind got left stranded when he changed course mid-battle to rescue some hostages' kids. Later, during a long rest, the barbarian told everyone, "You may have noticed I sometimes abandon plans when kids get involved. I don't know if you know this, but a long time ago, I was a child. I remember being small, and life is hard when you're small." Roland Stormcloak was defined by 3 things. He hated Dragonborn, the undead, and false gods, for these were the words of Raylan. Long story short, we had to destroy a demon that had been sealed within a staff in order to be able to return it to a king who would kill us all if we didn't soon. Upon encountering a wizard who could destroy the demon, Roland had to retrieve a dragonborn body to do so. He faced his group and used 2 command to get the dragonborn to follow him. An argument ensued, and the wizard interrupted to try and kill all of them and take the staff. By the end of a fight, the rogue had become a vampire, and the bard had stabbed the fighter with a knife containing a wish spell, making the fighter into a forge god. Roland looked at the group of beings he hated on principle and, with one deep breath, turned and left. Though he hated them for what they were, he couldn't bring himself to kill his own friends, things he hadn't had before the adventure and likely would never have again. And this was fully the 3rd time he'd tried to kill or let the Dragonborn be killed. I'm sorry, this is my own PC, but I still feel proud of him the way I imagine a mother must feel when her kid graduates or whatever. Hey, don't be sorry about that. We're all proud of our own characters, aren't we? This maybe doesn't count as character development in the sense that they took to a new path for the rest of the campaign, but rather on letting a character go. I'm still sad I couldn't play him longer, but it didn't feel right to keep him going. The party met at a prison camp at level 1 originally, where my tiefling shadow monk, yes, I am the queen of edgelords, had landed promptly after heading out for his first solo pilgrimage and being accused of a crime in a small town. Got sort of acquitted like the rest of the soon-to-be party, but had to trek to a capital city to get his prisoner mark/tracking spell removed. So the gang of misfits formed, came upon some ancient relic, uncovered secrets, and walked the plains. At level 10, so just when the monk becomes really fun, the party had come to a point in the story where they mostly wanted to hunt for treasure for a while. The marks were gone, and the first major main quest completed. The monk didn't care much for treasure, and had also reached a point where he might be reaccepted into his monastery. He'd obviously been expelled after getting caught up in the whole prison thing and being deemed unworthy, but he was promised a chance to prove himself. So with him and the party growing apart, it was time. He had collected all the arcane and mystical discoveries for the party along the way, and that would be his offering to the monastery, along with a physical show of strength. So DM and I sat down and discussed. We'd do a small solo one-shot to play it all out. If my monk met the elder's expectations, he would return and be loyal to the monastery. Due to the nature of the knowledge he had gathered, DM implied that the party might meet him again on opposite sides. It was my decision to make throughout the one-shot whether he would turn out worthy or not. If he wasn't, he had wasted his chance to return once and for all, the goal that had driven him to join the party in the first place. He offered up his collection of knowledge and secrets. The party had uncovered several intra- and interplanar portals, among other things. Then came a sparring match. Then the end-all, be-all question. He had met expectations, but was he ready to return and stay loyal until death? Yes, he was. Tears were shed, but it felt like the only right thing. He was my first proper character. The first lasted 2 sessions, lol, and was still my absolute favorite. I commissioned a painting of him and everything. That is super cool, and everyone should be proud of their very first character, no matter how cringy they are or how weird they are. We played a 4th edition campaign from 1 to 30 in college. My Minotaur fighter created his character and named him Risotto, based off that dumb joke from an Adam Sandler movie. When we started, all he wanted to do was kill things and sleep with harpies. Across 30 levels, he became one of the most inventive, creative, and invested players I've ever had. His Minotaur eventually betrayed the party to join a hot succubus that charmed him. He played an artificer for 5 levels, before coming back and spending the next 5 levels atoning for his sins through a vow of silence, only speaking again after he helped protect a village from the Tarrasque. The next 10 levels he spent as a selfless, unyielding defender in epic tier, and after the campaign, he went on to become a DM for his own group of players. Definitely the most growth as both a character and player I've ever seen. The sorcerer that found religion. So, for a bit of context, the sorcerer started out as an asshole character. I don't know why that got me. Only in fun, and everyone at the table enjoyed him almost being an edgelord parody, and early in the campaign, they were exploring a tomb and found a very cryptic room sealed behind several fake walls and corpses with a golden coffin in the center. He cast Detect Magic and found out the coffin and several things inside were innately magical and opened it. A vampire lord that I planned to be a big bad evil guy later on was released, and the sorcerer sold out a group of cultists he knew to the vampire so he wouldn't kill them. Fast forward months and they find out that the vampire has enslaved the Kenku race and was using them to cause an uprising and overthrow the current kingdom. The party's cleric, who was a Kenku and has been trying to fix the curse on his race, is distraught and blames the sorcerer for his part in letting the vampire out. Cue several sessions leading into the Kenku uprising, and the sorcerer starts fireballing groups of Kenku that are being mind-controlled by the vampire to save the party. The Kenku asks me if he can roll for trauma, as he put it. Natural 1. He started having a panic attack and completely shut down. The sorcerer, who up until this point has been a slightly less edgy alcoholic with an itchy trigger finger, starts to feel horrible for what he has caused. After the final fight, he looked across the battlefield full of dead men, women, Kenku, and others that he believed was his fault. So without saying a word, left the party and went to the temple of Sarenrae, the goddess of redemption, second chances, and forgiveness, and devotes himself to her because he wants to change and become better than who he was. He is now basically her champion and is now the most caring member of the party. Genuinely broke me and made me want to cry. Not the only amazing moment of roleplay with my players, but the first to come to mind. And that really was touching to me too. Brian Von VA here, making sure to check in after the video. If you like today's narration, please leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell, and be sure to follow MrRipper on Twitch and Twitter, while also joining our subreddit r/MrRipper, where you too can submit a story for us to read. Using a help action, you can always come subscribe to me on YouTube as well, Brian Von VA, where I release voice acting videos and stream games all the time. I hope everyone is doing well, and I truly hope this batch of stories impacted you in a good way. Being creative is never a burden, nor a waste of time. Neither is it silly to be fully invested in your character and feeling for them either. So be you and let the truest you shine through. All the love, we'll see you next time. Bye for now.